Greetings, programs. Welcome to my first final thoughts video. It's gonna be a little bit different than how I have the regular introduction videos structured. This one's being a little more loose, a little more laid back, where the other ones are a little more produced. I'm kind of have it. I kind of call it like a pre-recorded live stream. I have some notes, but other than that, I'm just gonna kind of riff and discuss the movies that I watched last week. If you're only interested in listening to one movie in particular, or maybe two, I'm going to have quick links to those movies in the description below. If you want to just listen to my thoughts on a specific movie at all, just click the link and it'll take you right to it. Let's get started. The first one was Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I went in really excited. I was actually really excited to watch this. It was one I've never seen before. It's a big Disney movie I've never seen before. And you have all that history behind it. You have it being Roy Disney's last movie, David Tomlinson's last movie for Disney. The Sherman Brothers take this long break from writing music after that film, and people I didn't even mention in the introduction video, which were Bill Walsh and Don DeGrady in particular, who was the head principal story writer for Disney at the time. He worked his way up from being a layout artist on The Three Caballeros and all those Disney anthology films in the 40s to eventually become the production designer on Sleeping Beauty before being the head writer for the studio. He wrote Mary Poppins, The Love Bug, a few other modest hits as well for the studio. And then this one was his last one before he retired. He became a Disney legend in 91. I think he got inducted about a couple months after his passing. But that Bedknobs and Broomsticks marks a big turning point for the studio. So I was really excited to kind of get into it. Especially, I had zero context for what it was about. My uncle, I'm moving around this chair a lot. I hope it doesn't pick up a mic. My uncle was kind of describing it as Angela Lansbury versus Nazis. So I kind of went, okay, cool. That sounds interesting. I didn't know she was a witch, so that was new to me too. And I was fairly underwhelmed by it. I think a lot of it might be expectations, but it was chased in. I think a lot of its expectations, a lot of it is my favorite Disney film of all time is Mary Poppins, and you can't help but compare these two, even though it's not very fair to compare them. But they're both shot in that same exact style, that cross between live action and animation, and there just wasn't enough magic for me in this one. The biggest standout, though, is the Sherman Brothers music. I think I'm gonna push Mary Poppins aside because that's even in the upper echelon of Disney films, that's in its class on its own, but the music that they wrote for this film is really good. I've been singing Substitutionary Locomotion, the Beautiful Briny all week long. I think those are like my new favorite go-to Sherman Brothers film music songs that they've written. And I think the film does a lot of these wonderfully lyrically complex songs a lot of disservice because they're not staged very well. A lot of the film is dark, kind of 1940s interiors, and even in the production numbers, they don't dress up the sets enough to make it feel whimsical. The biggest example, I'm actually going to tie it into my next point. I'll kind of tie it into the next point. The film also feels disjointed because of this disconnect between the music and the film. Portobello Road, a song that I think on its own is really good, it feels just disconnected. The big reason it's a 10-minute long sequence, but the film tends to it goes out of its way to make a big deal out of the song, even though the song is kind of melancholy-ish. And yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. Let's see. And I think the disjointedness also kind of crosses into the animation as well. You have that big sequence on the animated island with the animals. I forgot the name of the island. I'm drawing a blank on it, but it, it revolves around a soccer game, and you're watching all these animated creatures play soccer, and you're kind of wondering, what does this have to do with Nazis? Like what? Like what is happening in this movie? And I feel like it just feels very disjointed. And to bring Mary Poppins up again, Mary Poppins is a disjointed movie. You can definitely make that claim. I'm going to make that claim. Mary Poppins goes far off track sometimes. The difference is it's somehow the whimsy of it all makes it feel like it's in character with the movie. And for Bedknobs and Broomsticks, it just feels disjointed. The When it goes off track, it never seems to find a way to bring it back onto the rails, where Mary Poppins finds a way to bring it all back. Jolly Holiday is a 15-minute long sequence with Bert and Mary Poppins dancing on the chalk sidewalk, and then the penguin sequence, and all this stuff going on. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with anything? But they still find a way to tie it back to the characters, Bert and Mary Poppins, with songs like Beautiful Briny. Like, they're wonderful songs, but they don't feel like they're in character with the characters we've been introduced to. And I think that's a bit of a shame. I will say though, the last sequence of the film, when the substitutionary locomotion creatures manifest and become real in Go Fight the Nazis, that is Disney live action at its very best. You have all this fantastic visual wizardry. You can see why the film won Best Visual Effects that year. But yeah, I was very mixed with it. I was a little underwhelmed. Over the past week, I've kind of I walked away not feeling great about it. I'm kind of mixed on it. So who knows in a couple weeks how I feel about it. But that's Bedknobs and Broomsticks right there. The next one is The Biscuit Eater, March 1972. I went in not expecting much of anything. It's a movie about a boy and his dog. And it's funny because I never seen Old Yeller before until this marathon. And I was actually, and everyone knows the story of Old Yeller. Spoilers, the Old Yeller dies. So the movie always seems like a downer, and always feels it feels stale a little bit, especially when you see it done a billion times since then, in other films. So The Biscuit Eater definitely felt like part of that Old Yeller tradition of boys, dog. What's going to happen to the dog eventually? Dog's going to get in some trouble down the road or something like that. And I think it was funny because I really enjoyed Old Yeller a lot. And I actually very much enjoyed The Biscuit Eater. And I wasn't expecting to. And I think my brain just kind of tells me, my brain is hotwired to say this genre sucks, when ultimately I still enjoy the films in the genre. The performances were fantastic. I thought Johnny Whitaker was a fantastic leading young actor. I've only known him from his work in the TV series Family Affair, off and on from what my mom used to watch on TV. I thought the father, who I've never seen in a film before this, he's a very well-respected actor, Earl Holliman. I thought he was fantastic. Same with shout out to Clifton James, who plays the film has a villain. It's this curmudgeony old drunk who the dog's father killed one of his sheep or something like that, and now he hasn't been done against this dog. It's dumb, but I think Clifton James sells it as best as he can in that Clifton James kind of way. He is best known for being the bumbling, stupid Southern cop in the two Roger Moore Bond films, Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. So those being the first Bond films I was ever introduced to, I know this actor very well. I used to watch those films over and over again. But he's fun to watch. The film's fun to watch. It goes into this whole they're going to train the dog to be bird watcher. What the hell they call the dogs that hunt for birds, essentially. And there's a whole story with that. And I thought, the film is fine. If it's a lot of it's very sentimental. It's very classic Disney. It's harmless. It's harmless, but it doesn't necessarily push any boundaries whatsoever. It just exists. Um, Gene Siskel had this quote about the film. I keep saying sorry. Gene Siskel has this quote about the film. He said that it was, he understands that Disney's MO is to make films that feel timeless, and he agrees with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but he also wants to know, what time does this film take place? Because that's also important to the character of any sort of film. You want to know a sense of time. And when I read that quote before I saw the movie, I didn't quite I understood in a sense, because you look at the 1950s and 1960s as far as Disney films go, they have this sort of, they all have this Andy Griffith style of Americana to them. This sort of, everyone's comfortable with each other. The streets are all suburban and whatnot like that. And as we're progressing into the 70s, that timeless feel wasn't matching the cultural zeitgeist in any sort of way. I think the film that got closest to that was maybe The Love Bug, which moved. I thought it was the first Disney film that I've seen in this marathon that moved the filming out of like residential, clearly a backlot, into an actual city. And I thought that was very important to note. But going back to the Biscuit Eater and Gene Siskel's quote, and I understood it more after I saw the film, because I even wondered at one point, like, what time frame does this movie take place? Because they're driving cars that are from the probably about 1960s, 1950s, maybe. And Clifton James is driving a horse and buggy throughout the film. And but the home they lived in felt very modern, but very sort of late 1960s, 1970s to fit the time frame. It felt like a hodgepodge of all these different things. And I was very confused, where at the end of the movie, you have Earl Holliman and Clifton James having a fist fight in front of a dog kennel that looks like it was built in 1971, with Clifton James's horse and buggy that looks like it was from 1920s sitting off in the background. And I'm just confused. Like it kind of baffled me. I thought it was very funny. But yeah, I actually enjoyed that film a lot. Going into the final film, which is the Snowball Express, that was released in December 1972. And my boy, I think out of all of Disney's leading men so far, I've enjoyed Dean Jones hands down the most. I think he is a fantastic actor, and especially with what little Disney tends to give him when it comes to these stars, he is definitely. I think I've said it in my written write-ups before. He is Fred MacMurray on steroids. Fred MacMurray was Disney's first everyman lead actor who could star in almost anything, and he could give off that sort of like that Tom Hanksy feel. But where I feel Fred MacMurray was very kind of limited as far as coolness go, because he definitely had the My Three Sons, Andy Griffith sort of dad vibe going on with him. Dean Jones has this swagger about him, this very kind of cool collectiveness in his acting approach. And even as he was transitioning into the dad roles that Fred MacMurray had, he still kind of kept that coolness about him. And he definitely displays it here. And I think this film suits his acting sensibilities way more than, say, The Ugly Dachshund and The $1 Million Duck. Oh my God, that movie is horrible. Do not watch The $1 Million Duck unless you really just want to bang your head against the TV screen. Do not watch that. But yeah, it fits the sensibilities. It's a story about a man who lives in New York with his family, very brashly uproots his family, takes him to Colorado after finding out he inherited this this place called the Grand Imperial Hotel, only to find out if it's a dilapidated mess of a ski resort, or has the potential to become a ski resort. And, as my friend Steven always says, hijinks ensue. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought there was definitely a lot of fun to be had here. And I thought the supporting cast was all around fantastic. Nancy Olsen playing the wife, who I thought was very charming and very much written differently than other wife characters at the time for Disney. I thought Harry Morgan, who, for those who don't know, was Colonel Potter on MASH for however long MASH ran. He plays like this hermit who ends up living at the hotel, and he is so hysterically funny, and in a way that you don't necessarily get when you watch him on MASH as like the heavy. Also have other performances from other TV actors that you might recognize. George Lindsay post Andy Griffith is in this for a bit part, which I thought was kind of cool. But I thought the film was a lot of fun, and there's definitely it feels a little bit by the numbers for Disney, but there's something to be said when you can laugh consistently through a film like this. And I was laughing. I was definitely laughing throughout most of it. A lot of it's dumb. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of it is incredibly dumb, but it gave me a laugh, and I think that's the most important thing when it comes to enjoying films, on Disney Plus, especially films that are going to be dated, that are going to be a little stale or a little out of touch. As long as it can make you laugh, I think that's the most important part. The ending resolution is very ex machina. It's it goes into this whole, they can't pay to keep the resort, so they enter a snowmobile race that goes crazy, and then the last second there's this one line of dialogue that twists everything around, and it kind of acts as this big ex machina moment. And it felt kind of cop outish, because I honestly thought the film was going to go a different way. But it still didn't hinder my enjoyment of the film, which I thought was fantastic. So that now leaves Dean Jones with one final film left for Disney. He's gonna take a little break. This is 1972, and I think his final film will be in about 4 years on the timeline. So that's easily another 7 films away. But I'm definitely gonna be very sad to see him go, because I've enjoyed everything he's done for Disney. Almost everything he's done for Disney. His performances are always fantastic, even if the films aren't that great. But he is definitely my favorite of all the Disney leading men so far. Even Kurt Russell, who I thought Kurt Russell was fantastic in The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, he doesn't even hold a candle to Dean Jones, in my opinion. So that's the 3. That's the 3 films that I reviewed this week. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys liked hearing me talk and babble on about films. Next week, I'll probably have a few more films on the docket, and we'll do another final thoughts video. Cool. Until then, thanks guys, and end of line.